So I'm going to talk a little, I'm going to go a little down memory lane, and then I'm going to share a bit of insights that I've gained. I realized as I was preparing for this that TOC has been in my life for more than half of my life. And that was like a huge realization. I was very young when I first read the goal. So this is me in about the year that I read the goal. The version that I read was the revised edition, the edition where the word constraint first appeared. And I read the book. I became aware of the book at an APICS conference where Ellie and his crew he was on his mission about cost accounting, and I learned about the book. I picked it up in the bookstore and I read it on the way home. And I thought, oh man, this guy's been sitting inside my plant. How did he write this book? And it immediately spoke to my heart. I instantly bought a couple of cases and sent it around my company with a note. And I said so I worked at WL Gore at the time. I've been really blessed to work. When I've worked for companies, they've generally been amazing companies. And WL Gore was one of those amazing companies. No titles, very flat structure, thousands of people, many, many plants around the world. And so I sent this cases of the book around to peers, colleagues, bosses, for lack of any other word, and those who reported to me, and said, hey, I think there's something in here. If I spent the company's money on this, so if you don't get anything from it, just let me know and I'll reimburse the company for your copy. And I didn't get anybody sending me a note back saying, hey, Lisa, you owe the company $20. I also didn't know enough about buying at that time to really get things to move. But fast forward a couple of years later, after I joined the Goldratt Institute as a certified associate, they invited me back to start teaching workshops. So that's sometimes how those things go. Fast forward 2 years, and again, as I reflected on this, it seems that when something like a big, massive crisis kind of thing happens in my life is when I get a boost of, okay, now you got to do something that really matters. And so my husband had a terrible accident. And around that time, I decided to quit my job and start a little training company that was going to teach different functions about each other. Because without ever verbalizing my real goal in life, which honestly, at the age of 64, I continue to get more clarity on. What I know that I'm really about is helping people break down barriers between each other and within themselves. And that's really what inspires my work. So I ended up, after I quit my job, I became the person in the Phoenix area in the APICS board with the most amount of time to organize this one-day event that Ellie Goldratt was coming to. And that allowed me to actually meet Ellie, learn that there was something called the Goldratt Institute at the time. So that's me in the center. I don't look a whole lot like her anymore. But, and Ellie and Mark Whipple at that conference, at that seminar. And it was then that Ellie sort of laid down the gauntlet. I asked him why, over a drink, I asked him, so why don't you have any female partners? Why aren't there any, what's going on in your institute? And so he gave one of his looks and he said, because no woman has tried to crack my organization. It was like the challenge. And then Mark Whipple convinced me to rise to the challenge. And a few months later, I was actually working with the Goldratt Institute as a certified associate. Fast forward another couple years, and I really had the good luck and blessings to have been a part of this team, which was the way Ellie organized the whole thinking process development thing. Was he took a group of he took a bunch of certified associates in one group, and then in another group and a couple of partners, and he divided up the work of developing what was going to be the next Jonah course together. I remember sitting in the building in New Haven. This was during the first Gulf War. And so in between Scud missiles being launched at Israel and Ellie talking to his family and making sure they were okay, he would come back downstairs from the apartment and talk with us about things like Talmudic study and chaos theory, which it took a while to translate cows into chaos. And it was really just one of the big highlights of my whole career. That period of time just made such an impression on me. The challenging to the thinking, along with really feeling like being a family, was just incredible. A little personal side note, this was the first time I got flowers from Ellie 3 times in the 25 years that I knew him. And the first time was after one of these sessions when I happened to notice the similarity in the logic between the cloud and the prerequisite tree. And he was like, ah, perfect. And the next thing I know, flowers were at my door when I got home from New Haven. But it was an incredible experience. We developed a bunch. It's amazing to see how it's continued. We made it really, really difficult. And one of the things that I appreciate over the last couple of decades is work that a lot of folks have done to try to simplify these tools. I've learned to differentiate between TOC thinking and TOC thinking processes. To me, the processes are simply another application to help us put things together. Actually, so I'm going to go from here and just talk about a couple of the highlights in between, because there was so much in this period of time. From there, I left AGI because I needed to break my own conflict about consulting or no consulting. At the time, you actually had to sign on the dotted line and say you would not be a consultant, because Ellie really didn't believe in consulting the way it was done. He's since, right, then he went on to found Goldratt Consulting, and I think the breaking of the cloud, which is a subject of a presentation that I did at TOCICO a while back, had to do with really being in it to help build, capitalize, and then help the organization to sustain, tying what you were doing to the results rather than to the time you were putting in, and a lot of that ended up satisfying the breaking of that cloud. But I left AGI in order to eliminate my own frustration, frankly, of teaching people only for it to result in frustration in too many cases and not real empowerment to get stuff done. And I wanted to help. And I wanted to help the organizations and the managers that I was working with really get something done and really embed it and get results. And the cool thing was, I and many of you then were able to make that happen. Subsequent to, and so since that time, I've been a part of and not a part of and a part of again, incredible TOC consultancies. The two that I spent the most time with were Chesapeake Consulting with John Covington, and Goldratt Consulting with Rami and Yishai and Ellie while he was still alive. Very different organizations, but at the heart of it, incredibly dedicated, intelligent people who really want to make a big difference in the world. I guess another, listening to so many of you, right? You bring up so many memories and they come and come and come and you want to talk about so much, but I'm not going to dwell on it all. It's been incredible listening to you guys, at least since I've woken up this morning and gotten into about a third of the day. Another very special moment for me was after I finally finished Thinking for a Change. I made it a point to not have Ellie critique the book before the publisher accepted it, before I felt ready to publish it. I didn't want my book to become his book. I wanted it to be the work coming from me. And so I sent it to him and said, would you please read this? Let me know. I really want to know what you think. If you don't like it, let me know. If it meets your approval and you're so willing to write something that would go on the cover, a testimonial for it, that would be amazing. And his response to me sending him the manuscript was his endorsement of the book that ended up being on the back of the book. And that was like, okay, major achievement here. I want to sort of fast forward to 10 years ago, because that was another massive moment for me. I think that just as impactful as the time that I spent with Ellie and the partners and being part of AGI so many years ago, and being involved in developing the thinking processes and everything that came from that, equal footing to that was the time that I spent with Ellie in the months before his death. And just the intensity of his mission and the intensity of the message and the teaching that he did. Rami, I don't know if you're still on, but it was just so powerful, not just the emotion of it all, but the learning of it all. And to have the honor of sharing that with all of you in the days after he died was one of the moments in my life I will never, ever, ever forget. And I think that his message was incredible. It sort of leads into what I'm going to talk about next, how I'm going to start to conclude this. The two books of Eliyahu Goldratt that most impacted me were obviously The Goal, got me thinking about my work and all of this other stuff, even my marriage, and The Choice. Because in The Choice, he then really started talking about what it means to have a full life. And he was speaking to my goal specifically. And so shortly after that, within a few years after Ellie's passing, as many of you know, my oldest daughter died of cancer. And I bring her up because the combination of her life and death combined with Ellie's life and death had me really going much more deeply inside and trying to understand the gifts that came from them. By the way, Jen and Ellie had an incredible relationship too. They went through their cancer together in ways that just showed us all, well, it showed me the preciousness of life, the unpredictability of life, and how important it is for us to live our lives to the fullest that they mean for us. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about what all that has meant. Part of it came, part of the gifts of that came, and I'm showing you now the Venn diagram that Eliyahu Goldratt uses. So, part of Ellie's legacy is his kids. And I've learned so much from not just Ellie, but also his family, that I wanted to bring that into this picture as well. A little while after Jen passed away, I actually used a process on myself, because I was in my own version of the security and happiness cloud, the security satisfaction cloud, and I needed to find a way out of it. So I applied it to myself, and the result of that was the rebirth of the Goldratt schools, which was another very exciting, a sense of real accomplishment in helping that relaunch again and bringing not just consulting, but education and helping people learn and helping people use TOC to find their ways to their goals. But my own journey isn't done. So, right, I left that behind a year or so ago. And so now I want to just share some of the insights that I've gotten. Coming out of Efrat and Ellie's book, The Choice, the clarity in which they talk about the concept of thinking clearly as a key for us to be able to live a full and meaningful life has stuck with me quite a bit. And we use this, right? And so we talk about emotion and intuition and logic and how it all flows together, and almost like, get it in our DNA, and get the positive helix, Rami, as you talk about. But there's still something missing in all that for me. And this is where I've taken what I've learned from Ellie and what I've learned from my daughter and what I've learned and experienced with all of you. And so if traditional TOC has been in this half, right, in that half of my life, the next half is about a different version of holistic. To me, even the word emotion doesn't get to the heart of the additional piece that we need for living a full life. To me, it's about getting the marriage between the brain and the heart. So when we use the word emotion and we talk about emotion, to me, that's more like the engineering term for feelings and heart and love. And to me, we need to bring all of that together. And I think that it's actually about thinking and feeling. Both of them affect each other, so you can't separate them. And allowing ourselves to feel and recognize what we're feeling before we dive in and try to analyze it, which what most of us here have spent our lives doing. Is the moment something comes up, we try to apply our logical thinking to it. And I think sometimes that happens before we've even seen what it is we're actually feeling. And this is a lot of the investigation I've been doing of late, because it's the combination of both of these that lead us to make the decisions that we make, that then lead us to take the actions that we take or don't take, that then ultimately lead to our results, which come back and influence what we're thinking and feeling. So my next half is actually going to be about this, about not just the thinking part, but also bringing the feeling into it, so that I can be much more aligned with what Ellie challenged me to do in the first place, which is to be true to your goal. And being true to your goal is about being true to yourself and what's the difference that you want to make for yourselves and for others. So that's all I've got.